For today, we're playing Alan Wake 2 with the RTX 4060, and we'll start it off at 1080p at the max settings with no RT. Alright, here we are with that. And yeah, there we go. Cool, let's jump into it so we can get. Alright, in the game, and wow, I forgot how intensive this game actually is. We are in the 40s and almost the 50s in the city area, which isn't super intensive. Let's walk down here to the car and go back to Cauldron Lake. Alright, loading back in. In the 20s, okay. In the high 20s. Alright, here we go. Yeah, 30 FPS pretty much. We're just barely holding it. I think the lake is this way. I've kind of forgotten at this point, but I believe it should be this way. So yeah, 30 FPS on average, guys. The game doesn't stutter or lag. It's pretty good for the most part. And I guess it's playable with the controller as is. But ideally, we're trying to get 60 FPS in this game. So let's pause it here and enable DLSS 3.0 and see what we can do. Okay, DLSS, let's enable it and let's use the quality preset and frame gen active as well. Cool. Alright, back in the game. And this time we are in the 80s. So from the 40s up into the 80s and almost the 90s. That's pretty good, to be honest. Not too bad. I kind of wish we had more, to be honest, but we are using quality DLSS, so we have some headroom to go further with it. Alright, back in the car, guys. Let's go. Alright, back to Cauldron Lake, guys, and FPS is barely into the 60s. That is crazy. Wow. And the aiming? Okay. It feels like around 40 FPS, to be honest, or maybe 50 FPS. It's not super responsive, but at the same time, it's not too laggy either. I think it's definitely usable. Yeah, I think we need an extra 20 FPS, I think, for it to be super smooth. But regardless, at this point, the game is playable, and we can get 60 FPS for the most part in the harder scenes. So yeah, not too bad. I wish we had more, but it is what it is. What can we do about it? It is the 4060, and this game is one of the most intensive games out there right now. So yeah, let's back out, guys. Enable RT at the max settings and come back in and see what we can do. Okay, for RT, we're going to go with the high preset, and for DLSS, I'm going to go with the balance preset. Cool. Let's try it again. Alright, with RT enabled, we're getting 60 FPS here. Now, the image quality isn't great, to be honest, in this section. It's looking a lot softer, in my opinion. But at the same time, it's not too bad either. It's definitely usable. Cool. Let's go outside. We are getting some stutters here and there, guys. Keep that in mind. It wasn't like this with RT off. It was very smooth pretty much the whole way through. But with RT enabled, the game is stuttering every 2 seconds pretty much. It's quite aggressive. I think for me personally, I would disable RT with this card. But you can use it obviously with a lower preset for RT as well as the actual game preset. So you can have a more stable experience in general. And back to Cauldron Lake. We are sitting in the 40s, guys. And the aiming feels like 20 FPS, and it's very input laggy, to be honest. And look at the crosshair, by the way. It starts to ghost a little bit here, and it trails behind itself. It's not a huge deal, to be honest, but it does happen. But the main issue, again, is the input lag. It feels quite bad. So yeah, using RT at the max settings is not worth it at all with this card. And in general, it is pretty unplayable, I would say. It's not a good time. And the graphics look a bit better, but it's not a huge jump either. So yeah, let's back out, guys, and disable RT, and go down a couple presets to medium, and try again. And back into the game, guys, we're sitting in the high 40s and the mid 40s. So yeah, slight FPS bump. The game did stutter there, to be honest. The game did stutter, I won't lie. But it's not as bad as what we had with RT enabled. So it's doing pretty decent. Now at Cauldron Lake, we had around 30 FPS on average. So I do want to see how we go there as well. Okay, so now we're sitting in the high 30s, so we gained a good 8 FPS there from before at the max settings. And for the graphics, guys, it does look quite good still, as you can see. It looks quite nice. A small downgrade, but it does again look quite good. Let's keep going down here, and then I'll back out, enable DLSS, and come back in. Because again, at the max settings, we had 60 FPS with frame gen active. It was quite decent, but we need a small FPS bump to make it feel really nice and fluid. So yeah, at Cauldron Lake, it goes from the high 30s down into the mid 30s occasionally. But on average, it is sitting in the high 30s. Alright, let's back out, enable DLSS, and come back in. And back to the police station, FPS wise in the 80s still, and going up into the 90s. So like a 4 FPS increase, I think. We sat into the high 80s here before. Oh, there we go. Now in the high 90s. There we go, finally. Okay. So around a 10 FPS increase pretty much at this point. So right here we had around 60 FPS on average. And now we're sitting in the 70s and almost the 80s. There we go. Look at that. Way better, guys. Way better. And the aiming, it's decent. It's not super fluid, to be honest, like you would expect, but it does feel better. Okay, for RT, again, balance DLSS, and let's go down here. And for RT, let's use the medium preset as well. There we go. Back at the station, and we're playing at 70 FPS so far. It's pretty good. The aiming feels okay. It's not too bad, again. FPS-wise, guys, in the mid-40s, it's not great, to be honest. It's still pretty bad. And the UI has the same issue. It's definitely bugging out still. I can clearly see it. Yeah, it's pretty awful. So yeah, for RT, this card can't really handle it, to be honest, unless you lower the settings even more, which I think is not really worth it, but it's really up to you. And using frame gen is not enough either to get 60 FPS. So yeah, the aiming feels pretty bad, and we have the same issues with the UI. So for me, this one's a skip. Playing at 1440p, guys, with DLSS and frame gen at a mix of medium and high settings, with no RT, as that's unplayable completely. So I think 60 FPS should be doable at this point. It might fall below it at Cauldron Lake, but overall, for the most part, it should be 60 FPS in most areas. So at 1080p, we sat into the high 90s here, and at 1440p, we are sitting in the high 70s and the low 80s. Not too bad, to be honest. That's not too bad. The game looks much better. It's far sharper, and the graphics look much better, to be honest. It looks really nice. But again, the main issue is Cauldron Lake. Let's go back and see what we do there. Here we go. There we go, 60 FPS, nice. And the graphics, guys, again, look way better. Super sharp, looks super crisp, I love it. Looks incredible. And FPS wise, in the 60s, in the high 60s, it's quite good. The aiming, again, feels fine. It's not too bad. So yeah, 1440p is definitely playable as well. I'm quite impressed, to be honest. I'm quite impressed. It does do quite well. But again, for RT, I would disable it. It's just not worth the FPS loss with this card at all. So yeah, that's Alan Wake 2, guys, with the RTX 4060. I think the card does quite well. Again, at 1080p, you have the options of playing at the max settings, or playing at a mix of medium and high, and having some extra headroom above 60. That's really up to you. Again, RT, have it off. It's just not worth it. And at 1440p, the game is playable at 60 FPS at a mix of medium and high settings, with DLSS enabled. Yeah, that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time for the next video. See you guys there.